In the heart of the city, where the streets never quite go to sleep, there lived a stray cat named Midnight. He wasn't named by anyone in particular. He seemed to earn it, with his sleek black fur that blended into the shadows and those gleaming golden eyes that pierced through the night. Midnight wasn't like other strays. He didn't beg for food or cling to the warmth of humans. Instead, he wandered, always in search of something, though no one could quite say what. Midnight's journey began on an unusually quiet evening. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long, silver ribbons of light onto the cobblestone streets. His paws made almost no sound as he moved, his body a silhouette against the soft glow of lamplights. To the casual observer, Midnight was just another stray, but those who paid attention saw something more, a certain grace, a purpose behind his eyes that set him apart from the other street cats. As Midnight roamed, he passed by a small cafe that had just closed for the night. The smell of fresh bread lingered in the air, tempting him to linger, but he pressed on. He had somewhere to be, though he himself wasn't sure where. His instincts guided him, always pulling him forward. In the narrow alleyways, Midnight passed an elderly man feeding a group of stray cats. The man's face was wrinkled with time, and his hands moved slowly, but with care, as he scattered pieces of chicken on the ground. The other cats swarmed eagerly around him, meowing and nudging for more, but Midnight simply watched from afar, his eyes locked on the scene. The man noticed Midnight and held out a piece of food, but Midnight didn't move. There was something about the man that felt familiar, but Midnight wasn't ready to approach. Not yet. Continuing on, Midnight's journey took him to the park, where the leaves had begun to fall, crunching softly under his paws. There he found a young girl sitting on a bench, her eyes red from crying. Midnight didn't know why, but he felt a tug in his heart. Normally, he would have ignored such things. Humans had never been his concern. But something about the girl's sadness made him pause. With cautious steps, Midnight approached her. The girl didn't notice him at first, lost in her own world of thoughts. But then, as if sensing his presence, she looked down, startled to find the black cat at her feet. Midnight didn't meow or rub against her legs. He simply sat there, staring up at her with those intense golden eyes. The girl, unsure of what to do, reached out a trembling hand to stroke his fur. Midnight remained still, letting her touch him. For the first time in a long while, the girl smiled, a small, fragile smile, but a smile nonetheless. Midnight stayed with her for a few minutes, just long enough for her to feel less alone. Then, as quietly as he had appeared, he slipped away into the night, his mission here complete. As Midnight continued his nightly wanderings, he passed by the church at the edge of town. There, in the shadows, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks, a large, imposing tomcat. Midnight knew this cat. His name was Brutus, the self-proclaimed king of the streets, feared by all other strays. Brutus ruled with a heavy paw, and his territory spanned blocks. Midnight had crossed into his domain. For a moment, the two cats locked eyes. Brutus, with his scarred face and thick muscles, growled low in his throat, a warning for Midnight to back down. But Midnight didn't flinch. He wasn't here for a fight. Slowly, he lowered his head in a sign of respect, acknowledging Brutus's rule. Brutus, surprised by the gesture, hesitated. Then, with a snort, he turned and disappeared into the shadows. Midnight had passed the test. The rest of the night was peaceful. Midnight found himself on the rooftop of an old building, gazing out over the city below. The lights twinkled like stars, and the wind ruffled his fur. He sat there for a while, watching the world go by, pondering the lives he had crossed that night. The elderly man, the young girl, Brutus. Each had their own story, their own struggles, just as Midnight did. But what was Midnight searching for? He had no home, no family, no owner to care for him. Yet he wandered, night after night, as if searching for something that eluded him. Perhaps it was peace, or maybe it was belonging. Maybe he was just a cat, curious by nature, driven by instinct to explore. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Midnight stretched and stood up. His night was over, but he knew he would walk these streets again tomorrow and the day after that. Midnight was a wanderer, a drifter in a world that never stood still. And though he didn't know it, he had left his mark on every soul he had encountered. The city, with all its hustle and noise, would always remember the midnight cat with the golden eyes, who roamed not in search of food or shelter, but something far greater, a place to call his own, if only for a moment.